right, good morning. It is Thursday. We're singing the Thursday morning blues because it ain't Friday yet. All right, here we go. We are talking about urinary system. Not one of the more exciting parts of the body, but obviously a very important part of the body. Without that, it might be kind of rough. All right, so here we go. Not a lot of organs. That's the good news, so it shouldn't take too long here. We have first of all, blood vessels, inferior vena cava. Notice that the inferior vena cava would be flowing up. And so the blood is going back up this way to the heart. Okay, this is a vein, vein, cava, big, empty one. So inferior, come the bottom part of the body going back up to the heart. All right, now, so it's bringing the blood that we've filtered from the kidney. Once it's been all filtered, you can see my little pointer thing here. Okay. Once it's been filtered in the kidneys, they go back through these veins back there and go back to the part of the body. Now, blood coming to the kidneys would be coming through the dorsal aorta, which is, whoa, there we need to be. Okay, let's go here. And it's bringing blood from the heart down here. And as it goes down, the dorsal aorta goes down your backbone, then you can see where different little blood vessels come off. And these over here come and go into the kidney. Notice they're small going in, big ones coming out. We'll talk about the high pressure, low pressure thing here in a minute, and that's kind of important there. All right, so what else do we have? Well, we have on top of the kidneys, it's not really part of the urinary system, but they're here, so we're going to talk about them, is the adrenal gland. If you think about that, renal has to do with the kidney, so they're on the kidney, so they're the adrenal gland. Had they been on the liver, they might be the adhepatic gland or something like that. Instead of adrenaline, we would have hepatolin or something like that. Okay. Anyhow, renal, and these are what produces adrenaline when you get a burst of energy or scared or something like that. Makes your heart race faster, make your muscles work better, all that kind of stuff. That comes from these adrenal glands here. All right. Then from the heart, you got blood coming in. It's been different places in the body. Now it needs to go in the renal artery. Actually, there's several here, renal arteries, that split and go into the kidney. Okay, they're smaller, so they're going to be under higher pressure. That's a very good thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. All right, then they go in the kidney. In the kidney, they get filtered. It's a lot more complicated than that, but we're not going to go into a lot of detail at the moment. And then they leave through the renal veins. My little pointer thing here. No, I cannot. Okay, let me see if I can go back to a pointer. Okay. Anyhow, so basically they go back to the renal vein, they go back up to the heart now that they've been filtered, and they can go on and move on to their next spot. All right. Now, the tube going down from the kidney, if you remember on the pig, is the ureter. Okay. And finally, it reaches down here, which is the urinary bladder. Okay, where it's stored. So basically, as it's filtered out, it just kind of drips down the ureter. There's little muscles in here that squeeze it down here, and it collects down here in the urinary bladder. And finally, when we decide it's time for it to leave, it goes to the urethra. All right, just for the record, just like the anal sphincter, we have control over it, but there's also one that we do not control. There's voluntary sphincter and an involuntary sphincter. And if you don't go to the restroom, eventually it will say, oh, sorry, we got to go. And it will go for you. So there we go. That's basically it for the drawing. Now let's talk about some of the notes. All right. So here we are, as promised, the kidney notes. How exciting. I'm sure we're all pretty excited about that. All right. So first of all, kidneys are made of smaller units called nephrons. Okay. So just so you know, we're not going to go in a lot of detail with that. It has to do with blood comes in, goes through a long loop with a blood vessels wrapped around it, and it has to do with getting stuff out of the blood and then putting stuff back in the blood. But we're not going to worry about that for too much right now. But just so you know, nephrons, if you're about nephretic this or nephra something, it has to do with the kidney also. All right. And basically, as the blood comes in, they are under high pressure. I don't know if you remember back when we talked about osmosis and diffusion. Those have to do with high concentration to low concentration. Well, in this case, this has to do with high pressure, which is filtration. All right. All right. So in this case, when it comes in the blood vessels, first capillaries, it's under high pressure, which pushes it out into the low pressure kidney. Okay. And so much of the liquid part of the blood is pushed out. The liquid part of the blood is usually whitish yellow color stuff called plasma. It's only red because of all the red blood cells in it, but the actual blood is really actually kind of a yellow color. All right, and so it pushes it out of the blood and into the nephron of the kidney. All right, this plasma that's pushed out is called the filtrate because this is what's going to be filtered. Now, it's not all of the plasma, but a lot of the plasma gets pushed out right now. Okay, and that is the filtrate. Now, of this filtrate, 99% of it's going to go back into the blood. All right, but we're going to get out that 1% of waste products and things like that that need to be pulled out. If there's any extra electrolytes like sodium, potassium, calcium, things like that, or in a certain amount of the water will have to go back in, but some of it will be kept out. All right, now for it to be reabsorbed, to go back in the blood, if that blood was still high pressure, then it wouldn't go. But because it is low pressure capillaries, that allows the kidney to push stuff back into the blood vessels. So originally it's high pressure in the capillary, so it pushes into the kidney. Now as all that stuff goes in the kidney gets higher pressure, and now the blood vessels are less, so it can push that stuff back after it's decided what it needs to keep and what it needs to get rid of. All right? And so this low pressure allows desirable stuff to be put back in, and as we said, most of it, 99% of it's going to go back into it. All right. This process depends on proper blood pressure because if the blood pressure is too low, then the filtrate won't be pushed out, and that means a lot of that stuff is going to stay in the blood, and that's of course obviously not good. So blood pressure and the kidneys are tied closely to each other. Also, the amount of fluid that your body keeps is tied to the kidney. It decides how much water to keep or not. And the more water, sometimes that increases the blood pressure because you have more fluid sitting in the blood vessels, and so it creates higher pressure. And so blood pressure in the kidneys kind of go back and forth, and they depend on each other. And if you have too low blood pressure, then basically your kidneys will stop functioning. Now, the kidneys removes waste, okay, urine, urea, uric acid, some of those kind of things that are in there that are yucky. All right, and any extra ions, we said like sodium, potassium, calcium, those are all good things. Your body needs them, but if you have too much, then there's no use in that, so it's going to take out any extra. If you drink a whole bunch of Gatorade and you don't exercise much, well, you probably aren't going to need all those extra ions and electrolytes, so it's just going to end up in your urine, kind of expensive urine. But there you go. Okay, so, I'm not totally against Gatorade and stuff. I'm just saying you spend a lot of money that you really, most of the time, unless you're doing really intense exercise, probably don't need. All right. It does reabsorb water back in, glucose, which is sugar, and your body uses that, so it should be all the glucose should usually go back into the blood. If you find glucose in the urine, it ends up staying in the urine. That's usually a sign there's so much in the blood that it can't get it all back in, and that is usually a sign of diabetes. One of the first characteristics of diabetes is that the urine smells sweet. Even back in Roman days, they didn't know exactly what diabetes was, but they knew that people that had the condition and had certain symptoms that went with it had this sweet-smelling urine, and that's because of the high amount of sugar in it. Okay, amino acids, which are used to build proteins and stuff, so they're going to be put back in there. And, of course, the electrolytes or ions like sodium, potassium, and calcium, things like that are going to be put back. Most of them are going to be put back, but if you have too many, then they'll leave some of those in the urine. All right. Now, your kidney is located even with your floating ribs, which is back if you feel your last rib on your backbone back here. That's about where it is. They are called retroperitoneal. Retro means back, like you dressed like people did back in the day. You're dressing retro. Okay, peritoneum is the lining of the inside body cavity. So if you remember when we dissected the pig, the kidney was covered by that sheet, that lining around the cavity. It went on top of the kidneys, kind of holds them up against that back wall. So it means it goes behind the peritoneum, okay? And so it's called retroperitoneal, and your kidney is only about 5 inches long, so not real big, okay? And if you put your other finger up there, that part gives you an idea about the whole size of it, about that big. So it's not a really large organ, but very important, and you have one on each side, so you can even give one of them away if you find someone that needs one and is a compatible match. All right. There's also a lot of fat associated with the kidneys. The kidneys are surrounded by fat, which helps hold them in position, kind of connective tissue, hold it up against the wall, but also it helps cushion it a little bit. So in case it gets hit or jostled, even though it's already behind that membrane that kind of holds it up against there, that's just another way to help do that. All right. Now, if you lose a lot of weight, sometimes if you don't have this fat around the kidneys, it allows the kidneys to fall. They're going to fall down the ground and get squished, but they kind of come down. Well, you had this ureter coming out. Now it kind of kinks. A lot of times that puts a little kink in the ureter. Okay, and if it does that, urine can't go through it, and so it starts backing up in the kidney, and eventually starts backing up in the blood, and that can be very serious if you don't get that fixed. So that's called ptosis. Ptosis is the Latin word for fall, and so if your kidneys fall down a little bit, then it kinks the ureter, and that's called renal ptosis, or ptosis of the kidneys. All right, so it falls and kind of kinks up there. That's not a good thing. All right, incontinence is just meaning that you can't decide or control when you go to the restroom or not. That's common in kids. It takes a while for kids to realize there's little stretch receptors in your bladder, and they send little messages saying, hey, it's time to go. Well, young kids don't pay close attention to that sometimes and things like that, and so it takes a little while for them to learn to listen to the message, okay? Very common in young kids. Usually as they get older, they learn not to wet the bed or whatever they control when they go to the restroom. However, it can still be a problem. If you're a really sound sleeper, a lot of people just sleep so well that their body doesn't pick up on those things at night. So they have to make sure they go to the restroom before they go to bed because they may not pick up on it. But there are people that have trouble with wetting unintentionally even later. Okay, and as you get old, once again, it kind of comes, all things are new again. And guess what? You can once again go to the restroom. You've seen advertisements for Depends, undergarments, and stuff. That's basically just adult diapers. And that's because, once again, they can't control when they're, so they just wear the Depends all the time so it will catch any urine. All right? All right. Function of the kidney. We kind of talked about some of this, but let's make sure we know all these. All right. First one. You would not think about the kidneys monitoring oxygen, but they do. All right? They keep track of the oxygen in the blood as it comes through. If there's not enough oxygen, then your kidneys release a hormone, erythropoietin. Don't worry about that. We'll talk about that more when we get to blood. And basically, it tells your red bone marrow, there's stuff into your bones, to start making more red blood cells. Because, hey, we don't have enough oxygen. Well, the red blood cells carry oxygen throughout your body, so the kidney solution is let's make more of them. Now, that may or may not fix the problem. Sometimes you have red blood cells, but they just don't have enough hemoglobin in them, or maybe hemoglobin in them doesn't work. Well, if you make more red blood cells with defective hemoglobin or with not enough hemoglobin, that may not really help your problem, okay? So it may not solve things, but that's what the kidney does. It monitors that, and it keeps track of how many red blood cells. It doesn't really keep track of the red blood cells. It just says, hey, if there's not enough oxygen, let's make more red blood cells. That's its solution to everything, okay? All right, sometimes it works, sometimes not, but it's trying to help you out there. All right, the kidney also regulates the level of water in your blood. Besides being dehydrated or not, helping with that, we said it also, the level of water in your blood also has a lot to do with your blood pressure. So a lot of blood pressure medicines, some of them work by reducing the amount of water in your body, in your urine basically, and your kidney tells your kidneys to take out more water or leave more water in, and because of that, that can affect your blood pressure. All right, your blood pH, since you're adding and taking chemicals out of the blood, your kidneys can monitor the pH level of your blood. Your blood is slightly basic, about 7.3 to 7.4, 7.35 to 7.45, but yeah, somewhere in there. Okay, so slightly basic. 7 is neutral, so it's almost neutral, but it's a little bit on the basic side. Anything above 7 is base or alkaline. Anything less than 7 is acidic. Okay, and so you don't want it to, if it gets out of that range, then bad things can start happening. Enzymes don't work, reactions shut down, and eventually you shut down. All right, and basically it controls the proper level of sodium, calcium, and potassium. It can't help if it gets too low. That's when you need Gatorade or something to bring in some of that stuff, or usually from just your food, hopefully, is getting enough. But it can keep it, if there's too much, and get rid of it and stuff like that. All right. Now, when they want to find out what's going on with someone, they will analyze your urine, and we'll talk about that more in the next video. Have a great day.